Nice. Good lead in to what we're going to talk about, and a lot to cover in a quick 15 minutes. So since Governor Kemp took office, Georgia has worked on thousands of projects. It results are $118.5 billion in investment and more than 220,000 jobs across the entire state. I think what's particularly notable is that many of these projects landed in rural communities, as well as the hub and the metro regions. This reinforces the governor's commitment to create economic opportunity regardless of what your zip code is. So the first question for both of you, and we'll start with Lauren, is what has made this strategy work, and how have rural communities worked to position themselves to take advantage of these new opportunities?
Yeah, I definitely think, as everyone in this room knows, that's one of the things that we're most proud of. I think in our State of the State, we talked about 64% of the new jobs that have come during the Kemp administration have been outside of Metro Atlanta. That's 75% of the investment. And I really think what makes it work is you learn very quickly when you're in a meeting with Governor Kemp, whether you're presenting a bill or you're presenting a budget item, he wants to know how it's going to affect rural Georgia, how it's going to affect their ability to compete. And we put things in our budget along the way, grad-ready sites, grad-certified, and those things to put our money where our mouth is and the expertise of the department, so that if a rural community is struggling, not just to come and say we need this in the budget, to schedule a meeting, bring your economic developer, let's talk about what sites you have, let's talk about why they're not ready, let's talk about, do you need water, sewer there, do they need to be grad certified, and let's start building up from the bottom. And it's really been exciting. I mean, I've been with the governor 6 years now to actually see some of those sites and some of those really rural counties, which is where my heart is since I'm from a rural county myself, but to see some of those sites actually come online, and nothing makes us more excited as the big projects as when one of those sites lands, even if it's 90 jobs, we are just as excited about those as we are about some of the big jobs.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, Lauren had said it perfectly. It is, it's amazing when you look at the consistency that we've had. Governor Kemp is from the very beginning. My first meeting with the transition team, that's what he wanted to talk about. What's the impact in rural Georgia? How are we going to continue to drive economic activity in some of the areas that haven't necessarily found it in the past? And where does he get that heart for that? It comes from A, being a small businessman himself and fighting that fight day to day, but B, he and Miss Marty traveled across the state to every county, to every community, and touched the lives of people and heard from them. And so it's been a driving factor for us from day one. But I give the communities a lot of credit too, because that leadership it's a two-way street. We have to have leadership in communities. And I use an example this week, going to Dalton. It was last week. My weeks are running together. But I went to Dalton to visit a company, Gadia, which is a German company that we located during COVID. That company located on a grad certified site. The community had gone through the process. They were prepared for economic development. They were ready for the company. We actually located it during COVID when nobody could fly there, but the company was able to do that because they knew the site was ready to go. And so it took that local leadership to prepare it. And so, as Lauren said, from both sides, a focus on leadership and a long-term vision really has helped across the state.
So clearly, nothing happens by accident. I think we've all seen wonderful examples over the number of years. Somebody like Kia has really benefited from that intention. 20 years ago, we made that decision to come to the state of Georgia, and certainly have grown since then. But things that go into us making those decisions are what we consider to be the fundamentals: workforce, logistics infrastructure, connectivity, and certainly long-term stability. That all being said, over the past 7 years, Georgia has allocated substantial funding in those areas of education, transportation, and workforce development. How do you see the importance of these activities in keeping Georgia's momentum to grow into the future? Commissioner?
I mean, every company that I meet with, the three things that I talk about, and I know my team and our utility partners who've heard me talk to companies before, number one, consistency. consistent environment for business activity. It gets back to being pro-business for a very long time. Number two is infrastructure, connectivity. It's the ports, it's the airports, it's our ability to continue to invest, and we have done an amazing job. I commend Lauren and the governor and the team for paying cash for infrastructure projects. Like, we're not bonding that on our future. We are paying that cash right now because we've been well managed and we can do that. Number three is workforce. Georgia does an amazing job of supporting our companies, and Kia is a fantastic example of that. A long-term relationship between our technical colleges, Quick Start, and Kia continues to show benefits for both the company and Georgians. And so those three things continue to be the most important pillars of economic development. And so I give the administration a lot of credit because and our General Assembly, who has funded that along with us. It's been the backbone of our success.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen us put huge resources. I think QBE has been fully funded 7 years in a row. We've given teachers $9,500 in raises in the Kemp administration. We have $2 billion in transportation this year, including tackling I-75 in Henry and McDonough. And getting that, obviously, a main freight corridor and not something, we're in the top 10 of that in the country in terms of congested. We need to get off that list. That's a top 10 list you want off of. So putting huge resources into transportation, and of course, hopefully y'all are familiar with our Top State for Talent initiative and everything we've done for workforce. This year we rolled out our needs-based scholarship, Georgia Dreams, to ensure that every child that wants to pursue a college degree can do so. And then also, of course, our Georgia Match. We really have been focused on, we are a growing state. We're bringing all these jobs. We need people in these jobs. We've done a lot of studies on what happens to a young person at 18, and those people that you are losing, they are not in a technical college, and they are not in a 4-year. We need to find those people. And through our Georgia Match, so our direct admissions program, you've seen growth at USG pushing 6% and at TCSG pushing 8%. So we need to capture those kids and get them in the workforce for all those great jobs y'all are bringing.
Well, and I want to highlight that too, and go back to that Georgia Match. Lauren's statistic, our growth in both TCSG and USG is in the face of many of our surrounding states seeing a decline in enrollment. And so it shows that our efforts to go out and grab these kids and bring them in and maximize our workforce is paying off. That is a really important statistic when you realize that nationwide, that we are declining in enrollment in higher education. That's a big deal.
So we live in a state that likes our team sport. And we're very competitive about it, I think, right?
Says an Alabama fan.
That's right. So I get a lot of grief, but that's okay, I give it back. But I think the unique thing that is how economic development is a team sport in the state. What that means, as I have seen over the years, is you may have economic development leading an activity, but there are many other agencies that can come into that picture or equation. But where strong partnerships are created is within also the local communities, utility partners, private sector, and various other industries across the state. I would tell you from my perspective, that is very unique. And people that I talk to ask, how do you do it? We tell you, but you need to locate in Georgia. How has Governor Kemp's administration fostered that approach, whether it's in supporting small business owners like he and the First Lady, in landing major projects or building industries like the film industry to rely on strong collaboration? Lauren?
One thing that came to my mind when you were saying that it's a team sport, and probably a lot of people in this room have Governor Kemp's phone number. Sometimes that's hard on me and Pat, but honestly, I think, and I'll let Pat get to the more diplomatic part of this answer, but honestly, that is probably one of the keys to our success, because I really honestly always feel like I know what the communities are thinking. Sometimes it's more than I want to know. But it really is. I think that is so important, because we hear from the people in this room. And I know if a community, is unhappy about something, or they feel like they need something to be successful, or if I don't, the governor says, I got a guy. I met this guy at this thing last month. He gave me his number, and the governor keeps everybody's number. He's got it all worked out and gives me someone to call because we do very much value the partnership, and we're always trying to call the communities, and I just send people texts and say, hey, this is Lauren Curry, Chief of Staff for Governor Brian Kemp. Could you call me? And people just call, and I say, hey, we were wondering what y'all were thinking about this, or what are you hearing, or how's the community feeling? Because we really want to know what's happening there on the ground.
Yeah, look, I agree with Lauren. The partnership approach starts at the top. And we've been really lucky. If you go back, my 3 governors that I've worked for, and Lauren has worked for, she's worked for every agency, by the way, so which is also nice to have somebody in the chief of staff's role who has worked for every agency in state government. But Governor Perdue was focused on your best managed state and really getting agencies to work better together. That had not happened. And it was really great because it started this, kind of put it in the DNA of all the agencies to collaborate and to make sure that we're focused in the right direction. Governor Deal helping us grow out of the recession, and just also a very kind person. His goal was to make all of us work better together, and he was great at that. And then to Governor Kemp, small businessman who wants to see us make it as easy as possible for all of you to do your jobs. That really, this kind of longevity, it's almost in our DNA at this point that we work together. But I can even take a step a little further back when you look at, Charlie mentioned the fact that Georgia Power started economic development almost 100 years ago. Our utility partners have been part of this equation, and that's different than many other states. They help us from the very beginning of a project. We bring in every agency. We bring in all of our community partners. It's kind of in not only the DNA of the agencies, but it's in the DNA of this partnership that we've done it so long that it's kind of an expectation that we continue to keep it going. And so it's one of the things that I worry about, that I want to make sure that we continue this mindset that we're working together top down. But because we've done it so long, I do think there's an expectation that it continues.
I appreciate that segue because this question's for Lauren only. So you have been in numerous different agencies. And you have a very unique vantage point. You've worked for both economic development and now as chief of staff. From your perspective, what accomplishment during Governor Kemp's administration makes you most proud in the economic development? And is there a project or moment that you would share about them ultimately shows how Georgia have, really been successful in this area?
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, I started with Governor Perdue. I worked at economic development, DNR, EPD, and emergency management, and then came back to the political side with Governor Kemp, which has helped me immensely to be able to put kind of all the pieces of the puzzle together. And I've kept those agencies. I've picked up transportation and all the public safety agencies and their direct reports to me. And when I became chief of staff, this is my 4th job in the governor's office, the team said, you can't have direct reports when you're chief of staff. It's going to be too much. And I said, I'd hear you, but I have to have economic development because I work there, and I have to have Pat, and I have to have GMA because, if we're in an emergency, I need to be on, I need to be in charge of that, which brings you State Patrol and GBI, and I have to have EPD because that's so important to economic development, and I can help, and I need DNR because when we go talk to and we're pitching the state, we're talking about our quality of life and our green spaces and our state parks. And we want people to know that if they move here, especially from, out of the country, and they may not be familiar, that, we're a beautiful state, that their family's gonna wanna come here. So that has really helped me when we get to these things and people, they have an air permit, maybe they'll have trouble, to get all those agencies together. And that certainly came to light in Hurricane Helene, and I want to applaud the chamber and all the people in the communities that really pitched in. I was chief of staff of emergency management. That is, getting this, there's nothing more important for a chief executive is when the state is in a crisis like that. So I appreciate, everybody coming together, the utilities. The first thing is always we have to get the power back on. That's a public safety concern. You have to start worrying about looting and small businesses, being unsafe. People in their homes, they're either too hot or they're too cold. It's always the utilities first. Give me the outage numbers. And then bringing in the communities that really came together, and the governor did a 10-county tour during that time. that I arranged one Saturday night with my husband's help. So shout out to him for helping me figure out how the distances from each rural county, how long it was going to take us to drive. But that was a particularly proud moment to see everybody come together in such a difficult time. And then, obviously, probably the biggest, one-on-one compliment that I hear the governor get when I'm out with him is people thanking him for bringing business back during COVID. And that always makes us feel, it just makes us feel good because it was such a hard time. And that is when I came to work for the governor. And, I just told my family, I'm like, stop reading the paper and stop telling me about it. We're doing our best. No one's done this before. The information is spotty at best. But that's probably the biggest compliment that he gets out, 5 years later, people saying, I thought I was going to go under. I thought my family was not going to have food the next week. So, it turned out well. It was hard at the time. And these things are always on the other side. It's so nice when you're going through them, when you're not sleeping at night. It's a little rough, but those are two things, that I'm particularly proud of from the whole of government approach.
I will say thank you for everybody on that topic, because you led us through a very difficult time, and all the people that we employ throughout this state, I think, would say a thank you also. So last closing question, as the time has come to an end, for both of you. When you look ahead into the next decade, what do you see as the opportunities or the industries that you believe will define the state of Georgia's next chapter? And is there something we need to prepare for? Matt?
Well, the next decade, I think, is going to be very exciting. I had somebody ask me yesterday, I met with this, it was an Austrian delegation that was visiting, and they were very interested in AI and how is that going to impact manufacturing? How's it going to impact our lives? And I think, there are a lot of positives, there are a lot of negatives. I think the next 10 years are going to be fascinating to see, in not only in economic development, but every business that we are working with right now. How is computing, how is AI going to change that? And are we going to be on the front of that? Are we going to be part of that transition? Stewart's parent company, Hyundai, is an amazing mover in humanoid robotics. And if you have not seen the 60 Minutes post on humanoid robotics, please go to my LinkedIn page and look at the post, because it is amazing what Boston Dynamics is doing with Hyundai. And it's going to be in the Meta plant in Savannah, which is soon to be making a Kia as well, right?
Just a couple months.
That's exciting. But, if you look over the next 10 years, I think Georgia's going to continue to be strong in logistics, because that is the backbone of who we are. We're going to continue to be strong in automotive and aerospace. Those are core companies or core industries that are going to continue to blossom in Georgia. And then finally, of course, agriculture, ag technology, continuing to focus on food processing. And then interwoven in all of that, how is robotics and AI going to change all of those different sectors? And I think that's going to be the fascinating thing to see. And it's something that Georgia is going to participate in. We're very strong in our university system, and of course in the company competencies as well. And so that's going to be a big piece of our growth.
Yeah, I think they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and we are obviously very uniquely positioned, and with the ports and our logistics and the airport, so many things in the university system that we have going in our favor that may be a little bit stronger than our neighbors, but I just tell when I'm talking to legislators or others that are making decisions, we cannot rest on our laurels. The market's changed, we have to adapt. People have found the Southeast, we're all doing great, but they're also our competitors. All these companies that are coming here, and when the governor asked Pat, who are we competing? Maybe it's Texas, but it's often, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina. So people have figured out the secret sauce and making, a very similar sauce in their states. So I certainly hope, I won't be in this position much longer, but that we don't rest on our laurels and we stay competitive and put those products out there in that mix, that companies will still have Georgia as their number one choice.
Hence, the governor's is keep your foot on the gas pedal.
That's right.
Or the electric.
Even if it's a hybrid, it's still.
Yeah, or the
works.
electric or the hybrid. You knew I was going to throw that in there.
It's a joke now, keep your foot on, now we always say, keep chopping and keep your foot on the gas,
There you
even
go.
if it's a hybrid.
So join me in thanking these two wonderful leaders and helping move our state forward, and thank you.